and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. First thing I kind of want to dive into is kind of get into the economy here. And, we've kind of seen a lot of the overshadowing of this. And, of course, we got the debates and everything. I want to go ahead and get into this Ron Paul. Okay, we should be good there. Sorry about that. Okay, now what I actually want to dive into, kind of recap a little of what I talked about last broadcast. And let me get this one article up before I get started. Okay. And it has to do with, it has to do with a lot of things, but the Drudge's interview on InfoWars where he talked about basically being told that by a Supreme Court justice that copyright and all that stuff, his website will be done soon because of what they're planning. And we also talked about the gentleman that decided to buy a patent to a drug, pharmaceutical titan, and raised the price on it from $13.50 a pill, $13.50 a pill to what was it? Oh, I can't even remember now. But it was like 5,000% maybe increase. But how does this all relate to what I want to cover today? Ben Swan brought up the fact that a lot of this is done with the help from government, which is something we've talked about all the time. I talk all the time about, when you call for regulation, okay, this corporation's polluting. We need more regulation to stop those companies from polluting. What you don't realize is, well, what ends up happening is, they put regulation out there, which doesn't truly affect those big corporations. What it does is now it limits you from ever getting to, or it limits your ability to prosper in that same field because, well, now if you make an accident, it's going to cost you such a amount of money that you're going to have to go bankrupt while the big corporations kind of, oh, that's pocket change. Well, WikiLeaks released something. This is out of on Drudge, out of Independent, out of UK. WikiLeaks releases TPP chapter that it says would cost lives if adopted. WikiLeaks has released an intellectual property rights chapter of the controversial Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which they claim contains rules and regulations that would have wide-ranging effects on internet services, medicines, publishers, civil liberties, and biological patents. The idea behind the TPP is free trade amongst the member states. It aims to lower trade barriers, create a common standard for intellectual property, enforce labor and environmental law standards, and promote economic growth. The agreement has come under severe criticism and scrutiny, however, for the policy of total secrecy during the years-long negotiations. Others have criticized the more stringent intellectual property laws it would introduce, which could extend copyright terms and mean harsher penalties for file sharers. WikiLeaks editor-in-chief, that's just a caption for a photo, sorry. A number of trade unions and economists such as Joseph Stiglitz have said the agreement serves the interest of the wealthiest and caters to the needs of corporations rather than the citizens of member nations. Concerns have also been raised over the effect it could have on the cost of medicines by extending the intellectual property rights of certain branded drugs. Delays in the development of cheaper generic versions of these drugs could ensue, potentially leading to poor people having to wait much longer than the wealthy to get access to the newest medicines. The chapter of these intellectual property issues has been leaked by WikiLeaks and is one of the more controversial chapters in the whole agreement. Peter May Barduck, the program director at Public Citizens Global Access to Medicines, said that if the TPP is ratified, people in the Pacific Rim countries would have to live by the rules of this leaked text. The new monopoly rights for big pharmaceutical firms would compromise access to medicines in TPP countries. The TPP would cost lives. The document dated October 5th was apparently produced on the day it was announced that the 12 member states to the treaty have reached an agreement after 5.5 years of negotiations. The nations of Vietnam, Peru, Mexico, Malaysia, Japan, Canada, Australia, USA, Singapore, New Zealand, Chile, and Brunei are all prospective member states to the free trade agreement between them, representing over 40% of the world economy. Despite the leak, the final text of the TPP is reportedly being held until after the Canadian general election on October 19th. While, as WikiLeaks says, there still needs to be a final legal scrub of the document before it is finished, negotiations on the document between signatories have now ended. So, the same rules and laws that are put on the books that help this pharmaceutical giant that just recently bought a drug and raised the price by like 5,000%. it's being further along in a brighter or broader um, way to even further, monopolize on drugs like that. And then this also comes, you know, out of the United Nations and these trade partners. Well, maybe not United Nations, but I'm pretty sure they're behind a lot of this push. When you look at it, it's going to basically push eugenics by giving the wealthy access to medicine. When we talk, when a normal everyday person tends to talk about a wealthy person, they really have a misunderstanding of the concept. They make 200,000 a year. They make 300,000 a year. Those aren't the wealthy we're talking about. When you see things like this happen, it's going to be the billionaires, the trillionaires. The actual wealthy people. That's how much the poor have been pushed back, that they can look at someone that makes 80,000 and call them rich. Okay. Now, give me a second again. I'm going to kind of move along here real quick. GOP mess out of Drudge Report, and this is McClathy.dc.com. GOP civil war rages as McCarthy falls. Representative Kevin McCarthy's startling decision to pull out of the race for Speaker of the House of Representatives was the latest vivid illustration of how today's Republican Party is fairly divided between hardcore conservatives and pragmatists. And there's little hope of healing anytime soon. The Republican Civil War has been escalating for years, particularly since the dawn of the Tea Party movement 6 years ago. 6 years ago. It intensified this summer and fall thanks to a presidential race featuring three Washington outsiders leading most Republican polls. It's obvious daily at the Capitol where Republicans may control both chambers, but they struggle to get much done as they bicker among themselves. People don't understand. You don't want them to get things done. Getting things done is restricting your rights, and it only benefits them. So it's okay. We like that. We don't like them benefiting themselves at the cost of us. So when they're not getting things passed and not getting things done, they're actually getting more done. The moment that they start doing things that degrades us as a nation. McCarthy, the House Majority Leader, was the clear favorite to succeed Speaker John Boehner. No, he wasn't. Only among the elite establishment in the Beltway. Basically, John Boehner is leaving. Here's John Boehner McCarthy. It's nothing different. That's the problem. Um, but the California congressman was hardly a consensus choice. Wednesday night, the House Freedom Caucus, a group of about 40 hardcore conservatives, endorsed long-shot Representative Daniel Webster, Republican from Florida, for the Speaker's job. Representative Jason Chaffetz, Republican for Utah, mounted his own insurgent challenge. As House Republicans emerged from their caucus Thursday after hearing McCarthy's decision, they were stunned, surely, and in some cases sad, seeing no end to the turmoil that rocked their party. The battles are being fought on two fronts. Republicans are bitterly divided over tactics, with one side demanding brinkmanship on certain issues, even if it means shutting down the government. Hell yeah. The other side wants to be more accommodating. We've accommodated. That's what's got us where we are today. Content with getting 80% or content with getting 80% of what they want. They don't get 80% of what they want when it comes to them being a representative. They get 80% of what they want in the sense that they are corrupt representatives that are actually benefiting friends and themselves. Thursday, the rebels were Senate. People are so angry, so distrustful. We've got to do something different than what we've been doing around here for 30 to 40, 50 years, said Representative Tim Usselkamp, or Hulskamp, Republican from Kansas. We've got to do something different than what we've been doing. Blah, blah, blah. The other battle is over what issues to spotlight. Hardcore conservatives want more attention to tougher immigration restrictions. Don't agree with that. Defunding Planned Parenthood, yeah, I agree with that. And other social issues, not really, unless it's taking government out of it. The pragmatists regard themselves as realists who don't see a path to getting enough votes to enact such measures into law, and the Republican National Committee has tried hard in recent years to project an image of tolerance and inclusion. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, like Boehner, the object of conservative scorn, made it clear that ending Planned Parenthood's federal money would go nowhere. The president made it clear he's not going to sign any bill that includes defunding of Planned Parenthood, McConnell told a Kentucky broadcast recently. So that's another issue that awaits a new president, hopefully with a different point of view about Planned Parenthood. That kind of attitude only stiffened the Republican rebels who firmly believe they've earned a mandate to take tough stands. The grassroots Tea Party movement was instrumental in winning Republican control of the House in 2010, and last year the mission got a new victory when Republicans took control of the Senate. Yet, to the all-or-nothing faction, little has changed. We keep winning elections, and then we keep getting leaders who don't do anything they promised, said Senator Ted Cruz. Republicans control 54 of the 100 Senate seats and have 247 out of 180 versus 188 House majority. Until now, perhaps hardcore conservatives and Washington outsiders were ecstatic over McCarthy's fall. Great, Kevin McCarthy drops out of Speaker race, tweeted Republican frontrunner Donald Trump We need a really smart and really tough person to take over this very important job. The insurgents felt new energy from their march on other issues sure to become campaign trail flashpoints. You can read the rest of that there. That is titled GOP Civil War Rages as McCarthy Falls. And that's at mcclatchydc.com, mcclatchydc.com. And I have a clip here, Ron Paul Liberty Report, Ron Paul on draft, Ron Paul for House Speaker rumors. And then we'll get to another one here, what he thinks about the House Speaker seat. This first one's just a short minute and a half clip.
For Congress to be the Speaker of the House, and there are some rumors going around that there's a draft Ron Paul movement.
Yeah, I heard that. I think it's rather silly talk, but it's entertainment. I don't want to be part of the entertainment, but I'll tell you what. I saw something in the news yesterday. I believe it might have been on Drudge. The big announcement that might change anybody's mind that thinks I ought to be Speaker. It says Newt Gingrich is ready to serve. So, and people have short memories. They say, "Oh yeah, he must have been a good Speaker. We don't remember any problems he had." So, but somebody else suggested, well, Boehner, it looks like we have to keep Boehner around. Nobody else can do the job. They say, but he's going to resign. I said, that's okay. He won't be in Congress. He can be a member of Congress. I don't know if it ever gets that far where they get somebody outside of Congress. That would be interesting. But once again, that's a technical solution, picking and choosing on legislation. But you should be able to throw a monkey wrench in now and then. And I think the most important thing would be if people are serious, and you had a nonpartisan person doing that, is be very generous on the votes, but make the votes, an issue. Maybe having 30 bills in a day or something, and they'll be short and to the point. It'd be sort of like how they try to sandwich these amendments in on the big bills and make them up and down votes. So a nonpartisan wouldn't be angling, how am I going to stick it to the other party?
And here's the next clip.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, the big news right now is, will the government get shut down because those clowns in Congress can't find somebody to lead them? So are you worried that the government is going to close down? How soon will you miss them?
I'm terrified. I'm stocking up right now on food and water.
Well, I guess you've noticed the TVs, really, they're serious about this. And all the pundits and the military people are saying, we have to do it. This is a tragedy. I mean, we'll lose our credit rating. And how will the soldiers get paid? And this sort of thing. They're really building it up. And that part annoys me to no end because I think that's a farce. When you think about our financial crisis of a few years back, the Fed was able to use about $15 trillion bailing out banks, foreign governments, foreign central banks, and the whole works, and government never slowed up. I think the odds of anybody suffering from this so-called modified close down of government is zero. I can't believe anybody really is going to suffer from it.
Well, it's just like last time. They hype it up. They terrify everyone that the world will end, and then that's how they get the raising the debt ceiling, whatever they really want, that's how they get. The same is going to be true this time.
Well, even the official deficit, when they don't have the limit raised, you find out that the real debt is about $250 billion higher than the debt limit. So they go on and on. They always have ways to get around it. But there's too many black budgets and too much ability for the the Fed to bail out whomever they like. So I think that's one thing this is used for. But the other thing that bothers me about this whole thing, they don't have a speaker, and why is this occurring? And once again, the liberal bias in the media is saying, well, this is terrible. They're frightened that government will be closed down. And then they'll say it's only because the fiscal conservatives won't compromise. Well, why is it that the burden is 100% on the fiscal conservatives who don't want to budge? And they argue the case, and rightfully so, that they were elected to do this. And from our viewpoint, most of them aren't really cutting the way we would like. But the media puts the blame on these fiscal conservatives willing to close down the government. And in order to keep the world going around, we have to make sure that there is no breakup on this and that there's more spending. So what will that be the solution there? And anybody that understands fiscal affairs and monetary affairs should be very concerned that government continues. So I think these individuals who are in an unusual place where they can make people stop and think about what is the purpose of government, should we be spending this much, they're doing everybody a favor. And I think because there's so much activity on this, I think they're a little bit, frightened that government's going to lose credibility, which they are and should.
And that's why the media frames, I was looking earlier, the media frames it the hardcore conservatives versus the pragmatists. But you look at actual spending, and there really are very few. If hardcore conservative means fiscal conservative, you could probably count them on one hand.
And we have a few friends there that recognize that the military budget is bloated. Yeah. But in this budget proposal, they want to get rid of the austerity, so-called austerity of sequestration. And they want to eliminate there. And Boehner and Pelosi wanted to do that. So that would mean more money spent in the military. And if we were serious that we have a spending problem, yes, there should be work to compromise, not compromise, but work together. Why shouldn't the fiscal conservatives work with some progressive Democrats and say, hey, look, why don't we start off by stopping building weapons like the F-35 or something? There are places to do that, but there's no intent to do that. But I think that it's almost a smokescreen. It's serious, and there isn't a speaker, and they're fussing around. But that's sort of a smokescreen to hide, any effort to cut back on spending.
Well, here's how they did it. For example, just in the National Defense Authorization Act this past week, here's how they did it to get around this so-called sequestration, which instead of growing like this, grows like this, the defense budget. They simply put a ton of money in a special war-fighting budget that's off the books.
Right.
So they'll hide a big chunk of money here. But when it comes to spending on useless activities, they haven't pulled back at all. You remember last year they authorized $500 million to train Syrian rebels, and we got about 5 guys out of that. Well, this year they're going to double down and do $600 million for the same project.
No, what are you going to get? 7 fighters then?
And another $700 million to train in Iraq, the Iraqi army. How's that worked out after all these years?
See, my argument is, you mentioned one way they circumvent that and they get the money there, and that's sort of on the books if you search for it. But I think it's even worse than that. I think that, say, the activities can be paid by foreign governments, and they can pay the CIA and provide havens for the CIA. And how could they get money? Well, they can get it through the banking system. They can get it through the Federal Reserve, and all this stuff can be financed, and they do, And they also were expressing deep concern about the Ex-Im Bank. The world would collapse, and if the Ex-Im Bank doesn't subsidize interest rates. But how can you subsidize interest rates when they're 0 or 1%? It's this kind of stuff. But it's once again, it's control and manipulation. But there is a true impasse, on picking the next guy. But I don't know if this is any more exciting or much different than I was there, when Gingrich was booted, and he had a tough period of time there, and they finally agreed on a new speaker who lasted one day. He had some background problems. And, there's some rumors and insinuations that might be going on now. But I think it's even much deeper than that. I think the country knows, and many members of Congress know, that they have to at least appease those who think that we have a financial crisis ahead and we should cut back. But there's no intent to do it. They don't really want to cut, but they're at an impasse. How do you satisfy the people who really want to cut and the people who don't want to cut, but they're not getting the support from the people because evidently, 40 or 50 guys in there are standing up. If they weren't getting support, they wouldn't be in office, and I think this is a result of at least a token effort by the Tea Party movement to cut back. But that's a different story than picking a guy to get up there and wave the wand and tell people what legislation they can look at. This is the big picture. They don't know how to manage it. It isn't just managing Congress, day-to-day operation. It's how do they manage this monster? The size of government and the efforts in our foreign policy, the management of our monetary policy. I just gave a recent talk, and I talked about the end of an era. And I think the era is ending. And this is sort of symbolic of the era ending, where they're at an impasse, and they don't have a solution. So they narrow down. The media loves it, narrows it down. It's because 40 guys are finally going to hold the whole country hostage. That's just so far removed from reality.
And they also have to manage an illusion, which is even more difficult. The GOP especially has to manage the illusion that there really is a difference between the two parties, a substantive difference when it comes to war and finance and these things. So that's why you see the House adrift, I think.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And they talk about bringing groups together. But I've talked about that for a long time. But it's not bringing conservatives who are willing to be liberals and liberals willing to vote for conservative spending like the military together, because that has been the majority of both parties. And they've been willing to really share power. But, now that they're running out of money and they're facing the serious consequences of this, I think the coalition should be between libertarian conservatives and progressive Democrats who are honest. I get sick and tired of either the conservatives or the liberals who speak a good game, fiscal conservative. Did any Republican ever run for Congress who didn't say they were a fiscal conservative and they were going to cut and then vote for all that stuff? The same way with Democrats. They're progressive Democrats. I'm against the war and I'm for civil liberties. Then they go in and they get Obama in power, and then they vote for, spying on the American people and Patriot Act and all these things. And those big bills that we've complained about so much were strongly supported, bipartisan bills. So the undermining of liberty has been bipartisan. And I don't think they're concerned about the majority of those in Congress, but I think there is a fiscal concern. I think how do you manage something that is too big, out of control, and there's really not enough funds? That's, I think, where the real problem is.
What you've just been saying sounds pretty attractive to the American people. You don't have to be a member of Congress to be the Speaker of the House, and there are some rumors going around that there's a draft Ron Paul movement.
I heard that. I think it's rather silly talk, but it's entertainment. I don't want to be part of the entertainment, but I'll tell you what. I saw something in the news yesterday. I believe it might have been on Drudge. The big announcement that might change anybody's mind that thinks I ought to be Speaker. It says Newt Gingrich is ready to serve. So, and people have short memories. They say, "Oh yeah, he must have been a good Speaker. We don't remember any problems he had." So, but somebody else suggested, Boehner, it looks like we have to keep Boehner around. Nobody else can do the job. They say, but he's going to resign. I said, that's okay. He won't be in Congress. He can be a member of Congress. I don't know if it ever gets that far where they get somebody outside of Congress. That would be interesting. But once again, that's a technical solution, picking and choosing on legislation. But you should be able to throw a monkey wrench in now and then. And I think the most important thing would be if people are serious, and you had a nonpartisan person doing that, is be very generous on the votes, but make the votes, an issue. Maybe having 30 bills in a day or something, and they'll be short and to the point. It'd be sort of like how they try to sandwich these amendments in on the big bills and make them up and down votes. So a nonpartisan wouldn't be angling, How am I going to stick it to the other party? And they just think it's a disaster. You know, a party in Washington never wants to lose the party in charge never wants to lose a significant vote on a passage, and they will keep it open. One night we were there until 3 a.m. on that
blood on the floor.
On the prescription drug program, and finally they got it passed. They had to pass, and they weren't going to give up. So that's not going to be the ultimate solution. The ultimate solution for this problem that we face as a nation is for a new generation, including the remnant of those who believe in the free enterprise system and believe in the Constitution, is that what should the role of government be? Should it be that we should have this runaway welfare spending? Should it be that our government can snoop on us and spy on us and lie to us and put us in jail, though, if we even hint of lying to the government? But the government's allowed to lie to us, put us into wars. And is that the purpose of a government in a free society? We have to first ask the question before we can get the answer. We do everything along the way, whether it's having good members in Congress or whether you prod and push the speaker in certain ways, that all can be helpful. But ultimately, this problem cannot be solved until we ask the question. But the question will be asked because we're rushing toward that major collision with reality. Certainly in the monetary financial area, we can't allow this continuation of just printing money. And now the printing of money is done totally in secret and it's passed out in secret. So there's a lot that can be done. But when we ask the question, what should the role of government be? Very simply for me is get out of the way, protect liberty. Don't tell people how to run their lives, and don't tell people how to spend their money, and don't tell other countries how they ought to run their country. Our goal then should be to set a good standard to the point where others would look to us and want to emulate us. That, to me, would be a much better role for government. And we had hints of that in our early history, but we have forgotten about it. And the last 100 years has been very negative. I'm hoping that this next 100 years will do a lot better. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.
Okay, I should be back on now. Okay, top article on Drudge right now. Ryan reconsiders run. And he's, I'm not going to run, I'm not going to run, I'm not going to run. Because he's Boehner. He's just another Boehner. McCarthy dropping out because he's just another Boehner. The problem is the people that are pushing Boehner out are not going to allow just another person that does the same crap as Boehner to pop in. They go, oh, you know, Paul Ryan's different in these ways. Bull. Basically, you know, voting for Democrat or Republicans like asking what, you know, foot you want kicking you in your butt. You want the left foot or the right foot kicking you in your butt. And, you know, picking these Paul Ryans and McCarthy's and Boehner himself is like asking, now how should I be kicked with that foot? Should we get a full, you know, frontal kick, or should we get the, you know, spin kick? Or that's basically what, you know, that comes down to. We don't really have anybody, I believe, that's stepping up to run for House Speaker that would do a good job. So that leaves a pretty big conundrum. And I hope it does tie up Congress. I hope Congress gets tied up. I hope no TPP gets ratified, no bills get passed. I don't want to see Congress do a damn thing until they start repealing all these laws and regulations that prevent the everyday person from getting by. And, you know, a lot of this BS, we should help the little guy. Don't give me no help the little guy. Repeal this BS that prevents the little guy from prospering and benefits these, corporations that, we can violate that law because we can afford $6,000. Shoot, we can afford that $10,000 fine. While little tiny mom and pop stores are, $10,000. Well, Ma, I think we're going to have to shut down the store. It's just ridiculous. CNN Politics, it was on the top article on Drudge. Paul Ryan considering running for House Speaker. And it's actually a video, and I don't think I'm going to go ahead and play that. Let's see what we got here. Well, it's not going to give me the actual article that I was looking for. But Paul Ryan, he was one of those at the very beginning Tea Party has started supporting, going, we think he's kind of Tea Party type, and quickly found out he wasn't, and completely abandoned him. And do you think he's not going to get the same pressure that McCarthy and Boehner got? I don't believe so. And we might get back into politics here in a little bit. I do want to. Okay, I want to get into this We Are Change. Give me a second while I try to get this up. There we go. Maybe. Okay. But I've been warning about the economy, and people are like, look, the stock market looks like it's getting better. Yeah, it looks like it's getting better. It's pretty evident now that the stock market doesn't indicate how the economy is doing, and doesn't ever play an effect until after the fact, where, oh, now you all realize you guys are screwed. Damn, too bad we already cashed out. A lot of people that cash out too are politicians that are allowed to insider trade because, well, they're allowed to trade and they pass laws that affect it. They write themselves out of laws all the time, just like Obamacare. Now let me go ahead and cue this up here. Luke Rudowski, we are changed. Transforecaster predicts more economic troubles and war. We are changed on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel.
This is Orgdowski of WeAreChange.org, and we are joined by the one and only Gerald Celente. We are here in Kingston, New York. Occupy Peace just ended. It was a great event. People from all political spectrums were speaking here. What is your overall take from today's event, Gerald?
The energy was sensational. The passion is real. And we have a program that people believe in. They know that we're on the path to the greatest war of the 21st century. How many more people have to wash up on the shores of all of these countries? Whether they're on little boys in Greece, on Turkey, families being killed as they're trying to escape countries that have been bombed out by the United States and its coalition of the killing. So the people here were here because they are concerned about this endless war on terror that is not only draining us of our very limited resources, both economic and human, but the immorality of it all. So people have had enough. And that's what Occupy Peace is. It's the beginning of a new age of America. It was an historic beginning at the most historic four corners in the United States. The only place where there's a pre-Revolutionary War building on each corner. And the importance of it is that the people understand that the only thing that the military-industrial complex in Washington have to show for this is failure. Now you tell me. How many successes can the military add up? Let me know one. Let's talk. Libya, great job. Gaddafi has to go. Oh, yeah, he's going, and now the place is going to hell. Totally destroyed. Assad has to go. Look at Syria. Hussein has to go. Look at Iraq, over 1 million dead. We got to get rid of them Taliban, I tells you. Who are the refugees? They're coming from Afghanistan. They're coming from Iraq. They're coming from Libya. They're coming from Syria. They're coming from Yemen now, because the United States and its coalition of the killing are slaughtering the poorest people in the Middle East for doing nothing. Nothing. They didn't invade anybody. So that's what this movement is about, to bring peace and prosperity back to America, rather than more war over there and robbing us of our rights over here.
It's definitely a very important and well-needed movement. Being in places like Japan and seeing people struggle economically, protesting the U.S. military-industrial complex there, seeing the suicide numbers go up, seeing families and grandmothers in Greece at the lines at the ATMs, you know, that feeling of that is something wrong is everywhere around the world. And I think Occupy Peace is a very important movement that I think should galvanize people, and I'm very happy you're doing it. Now, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is a lot of people, every year, people always say something big is going to happen economically. Something big is going to happen geopolitically. Every summer, people are saying something's going to happen. This year, people are saying it's going to happen a lot more. They're also talking about the Shemitah, the 7-year cycle. They're talking about all these other things. From your research, from everything that you've been involved in, what do you think is possibly going to happen?
We had forecast on August 6th that there's going to be a equity market meltdown globally. You're going to start seeing equity market panics. Where it happens first, I don't know. And this is a risky thing because they always come up with schemes undreamed of. So whoever would have dreamt that we would now are going into our 10th year that the Federal Reserve has never raised interest rates, and we're at zero. Who would have ever believed that they'd come up with something called quantitative easing? Or if I'm Japanese, we'll call it Abenomics. Hey, you came back from Japan, right? Hey, look at that GDP right down the toilet, as we would have said in the Bronx. Toilet for the proper people. After all of that Abenomics, all of that quantitative easing, that in ratio to U.S. GDP is 3 times greater. Hey, but look at that Nikkei index. Really neat, right? Up over 80%. That's all of this cheap money scheme. So you don't know what the criminals in charge will do to keep their gambling habit healthy. So they'll keep stealing your money any way they can and give it any name they want. So, but we still believe with all of that manipulation, before the end of the year, it's sayonara.
We already saw a little hit from China and how it affected our markets, and understanding how the big players got out before it actually got low, how the whole thing's pretty much just a Ponzi scheme on Wall Street, and how the whole game is rigged against everyone else except for the very few, except for the very elites. Now, in these kind of extreme times, people will look for extreme answers. I think this is why maybe Trump and Bernie Sanders are kind of the two more front-running presidential candidates, both extremes on either dichotomy. What do you think of the presidential election as it's shaping out to be now, and what do you think of those two candidates?
It's the presidential reality show. That's what we called it back in our spring issue of the Trends Journal, and that was before Donald Trump got into it. And now we have a reality show champion. What I like about Trump is that he's shaking things up. What I dislike, and he is who he is, what I dislike about Sanders, he's a fraud. I voted against the Iraq War. You did, huh? You did. And you voted to fund all of the Afghan wars, all of the budgets, all the Iraq wars. Hey, you love what they did to Gaddafi, don't you, huh, Bernie? Did you get off on that one? Because it looks like you don't get off on a lot, because you do get off on the audience when they say to you at your town meetings the slaughter that the Israelis are committing against the Palestinians, and you tell them to shut up and sit down. And what are you, a little baby that's been paid for by APEC? It's not Bernie Sanders, it's bullshit Sanders. BS is the perfect initial for him. So he's a fraud. Anybody to me, anybody that votes for Republican or Democrats are accomplices to murder and to thievery. How much more of our money do they have to steal? The names are too big to fail. Bailouts, loan guarantees, tax breaks, before you call a thief a thief. And how many more people do the Republicans and Democrats have to kill before you call them murderers? So everybody hanging on to a little sick dream that the crazy person they believe in is better than the other crazy person they don't believe in, they're as out of their mind as the psychopaths and sociopaths that they vote for. So when you look and listen to all of the presidential candidates, they're all war hawks. Not a peep about peace. Not a peep about peace. Not a peep about peace.
Definitely right. And thank you so much for that just breakdown, because I find a lot of people are swayed either in the Trump or Bernie Sanders direction, but don't really take a step outside and take a bigger picture. And you're great at not only telling people what the picture is, but what the picture is going to be in the future. Do you have any other predictions or anything that you're forecasting happening this year?
What I'm most concerned about is a terrorist strike, be it false flag or real. You can't keep killing people all over the world and not them wanting to get even with you. As again, they call it blowback, but it's more than that. It's, bombing back, bullets back. As we used to say in the Bronx, payback's a bitch. You're going to screw with people, they're going to get even with you. So whether it's false flag or real, all you have to do is have one major terror strike. People's mind will be off the economy. Bop, never think about it again. Gone. They won't hear you. All they'll be doing is tying yellow ribbons around everything that doesn't move and waving flags, and we got to get them over there before they come over here. To remind people that are too young to know about this, when I was a young man, a Vietnam age, draft age, to become cannon fodder, they used to say, if we don't stop those commies over there in Vietnam like dominoes, they're going to keep falling. And before you know it, they'll be falling on the shores of California. So it's the same kind of stupid psychology.
That kind of emotional manipulation that they use to bring out fear in order to get what they want, that problem, reaction, solution. I thank you so much for breaking things down for me. Definitely check out Occupy Peace and General Solete's Trends Forecasters. Incredible breakdown. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say?
Tie a yellow ribbon. You know what that's from?
No.
It's from a song. Tie a yellow ribbon round the old. The guy was getting out of jail. He tied a yellow ribbon to welcome him out of jail. And everybody made up this whole other thing about it. And then, of course, to help us occupy peace by going to our website, occupypeace.us. It's not .com, it's .us, us, United States. And it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us. So do what you can to help us occupy peace with donations, suggestions, and actions. Because if we don't, I believe in Einstein's analysis of the Third World War. He said, I don't know how it will be fought, but the fourth will be fought with sticks and stones.
Very well said. Thank you so much.
We are Change. We are change.org, and we are Change on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Check it out. And, that's one of the most important things to remember, too, that if we decide to blow off in some war with the top countries, we have weapons now that we didn't see any sign of until towards the end of World War II and the end of World War II. And we started realizing the capacity of the death toll that could be caused by these literally wiping out the world, or 90% of it. And if we get into another one that's a physical world war, like you said, the fourth would be fought with sticks and stones. All of our economic problems are really linked to government interference. The Federal Reserve, a private-owned bank, is in control of our money supply. The interest rate, they basically charge us for our own money. Therefore, we're paying every time we have to print it. We're constantly at war, where we have a federal government that's involved in social issues that it has no place in social issues. Communities are supposed to deal with their social issues, and every state's supposed to be a testing ground for ideas. And only time the government is to intervene is when those states are being unconstitutional. They are disobeying the Bill of Rights. Instead, the Fed tends to step in to abridge those Bill of Rights. They've took it upon themselves to interpret that as, well, the states can't abridge your Bill of Rights. That's where the federal government steps in. And that's looking at it just from constitutional and from the concept that these people have some type of authority. Well, the only document that they have ever produced that shows their authority is the Constitution. If they disobey the Constitution, then basically they're null and voiding their own authority over others. Then it just becomes a oligarchy, and that's exactly what we have. And look at everything surrounding Hillary. She's still in the race. And when you look at all the factors, the free market isn't allowed to operate as a free market. It's government intervenes in that. We have politicians that write bills to help out the people that donated to them or their friends, and it comes off of your back. And the constant wars. It's just, we don't even declare war anymore. We just bomb, shoot, and kill. And then go, why are they mad at us? We freed them. We might have freed some of them to their God. And another thing I dislike is the fact that you'll see people attack military members. A lot of these military members are patriotic. They might not have the open-mindedness to see what's happening with them. They are brainwashed themselves, just like most of society. But they come from a patriotic family. Their family, a lot of them do. Their family was in the military, and they want to serve their country and protect the freedoms. I know a lot of them, and I hope more of them see it this way when they come home. And a lot of people like to say almost all these soldiers have PTSD, and a lot of them do have legitimate PTSD. A lot of them, too, you know, you do so many tours, you're barely back at home, you barely get a experience anything to come back home, take your wife and your kid to the zoo and barbecue out one weekend, and you're back. And the years that these soldiers are doing, they're coming back to a country that has been completely altered. You know, these soldiers come back and there's these race wars going on all over. Shootings, you know, quote unquote, mass shootings, are going all over the media all the time. You would make you think that just shootings are up, people are just shooting everybody, and it's not the case. You got a president that says, well, your guns need taken away. Going, why people are shooting people? You want to take my gun away? I think a lot of them are more in shock of what's happened to their country. Talking about that, let me try to find this article here. Might find it. Right here. Washington Times, armed guards protect Senate Democrats as they demand new gun control laws. The Democrats' priorities for gun control, which also closely mirrored the plan rolled out last week by Democratic presidential frontrunner Hillary Rodham Clinton, included closing background check loopholes such as stopping criminals from buying firearms at gun shows or online, improving background checks to include barring domestic abusers and stalkers from buying guns, and shutting down the illegal gun pipeline by making straw purchases of guns and gun trafficking a federal crime. It already is. When you're doing the background check, you mark a box that says that you're not buying it for someone. The victims and their families deserve better than a Congress that shrugs its shoulders and waited for the next tragedy, said Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, Democrat. They deserve action. as they have armed guards protecting them. And a lot of these, Secret Service and private companies sign disclosure agreements that keep them from talking about anything they hear or see. A lot of them, well, they got cushy jobs. Why the hell are they going to actually tell the truth? They're not going to be whistleblowers. They got cushy jobs, and plus they probably fear whistleblowing, probably not only in my career but my life possibly. Talking kind of about the Clinton there, Google Sneak. This from QZ.com. The stealthy Eric Schmidt startup that's working to put Hillary Clinton in the White House. An under-the-radar startup funded by billionaire Eric Schmidt has become a major technology vendor for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, underscoring the bonds between Silicon Valley and the Democratic politics. The groundwork, according to Democratic campaign operative and technologist, is part of efforts by Schmidt, the executive chairman of Google parent company Alphabet, to ensure that Clinton has the engineering talent needed to win the election, and it is one of a series of quiet investments by Schmidt that recognize how modern political campaigns are run, with data analysis, analytics, and digital outreach as vital ingredients that allow candidates to find, court, and turn out critical voter blocks. But campaigns lacking stock options and long-term job security find it hard to attract the elite engineering talent that Facebook, Google, and countless startups rely on. That's also part of the problem that Schmidt on the groundwork are helping Clinton team solve. The groundwork is one of the Clinton campaign's biggest vendors, billing it for more than $177,000 in the second quarter of 2015, according to federal filings. Yet many political operatives know little about it. Its website consists entirely of a gray on black triangle logo that suggests the digital roots of change, while also looking vaguely like the Illuminati symbol. We're not trying to obfuscate anything. We're just trying to keep our heads down and do stuff, says Michael Slabby, who runs the groundwork. He was the chief technology officer for President Barack Obama's 2008 campaign, a top digital executive for Obama 2012, and the former chief technology strategist for Tomorrow Ventures Schmidt Angel Investment Fund. He explained that the groundwork and its parent company, Chicago-based Tim Shell, which according to its website is named for a Hebrew word meaning you may, and is devoted to helping humanity solve our most difficult social, civic, and humanitarian challenges, are all one project with the same backers, whom declined to name. There are a lot of people who can write big checks. Eric recognizes how the technology he's been building his whole career can be applied to different spaces. Schmidt did not respond to several requests for comment, but several Democratic political operatives and technologists who would only speak anonymously to avoid offending Schmidt and the Clinton campaign confirmed that the groundwork is funded at least in part by the Alphabet chairman. The groundwork was initially based in an office in downtown Brooklyn, just blocks from the headquarters of the biggest client. the Clinton campaign, a staff made up mostly of senior software engineers began building the tools and infrastructure that could give her a decisive advantage. Has anybody really trusted Google or Eric Schmidt? Really, really fishy things that constantly go on with them. And they basically have put it where anything they feel is bad, they want to censor from the internet. So I really don't see any good outlook coming from that. Okay, give me a second here. Now, one person I haven't talked about quite yet, Donald Trump. Did anybody hear Donald Trump's speech on national security? You know, this is one thing that just, you know, he's exactly the same as any other politician, any other elitist. And like I said, I really think he has fascism in his ideology. He might not know it, but some of the rhetoric that he spouts really is awkward. Next News Network put out a clip, Donald Trump's speech on national security. Let's put one that popped up here for me. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip here. Donald Trump, speech on national security, Los Angeles.
Please help me welcome Mr. Donald J. Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Donald Trump. Thank you so much. Boy, oh boy, I didn't expect that. You know, Joel and the group called and they said, would you come over and speak? I'm here for a certain reason. You know, it's called Tomorrow Night. So I got here and they asked a couple of days ago, would it be possible to come over and say a few words? An endorsement from your group with so many veterans, hundreds of thousands of veterans. I really appreciate that, Joel. I did not expect it. I didn't expect it. I didn't ask for it. I will say this. I am with the veterans 100%. They're our greatest people. They're being treated terribly. Not only the number of deaths, which are obviously, that's tantamount, that's what's going on is incredible. But as of 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, the vets had the longest wait in the history of the Veterans Administration. You go in and see a doctor, you wait for days, and it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. If I win, believe me, it's not going to happen. And one of the things I thought I'd do and I'd stress so strongly, the veterans hospitals, obviously, they have problems. They're not properly run. And when you have to wait long hours and long days, and then in some cases have the doctor say, I'm sorry, I'm going on vacation, believe me, it doesn't get much worse than that. So we're going to create a whole new system. We're going to take the system apart. And if they're not doing the job, the veterans are going to go to private doctors, private hospitals, public hospitals. And we're going to reimburse those doctors and those hospitals. And you're going to get the greatest service of any veterans in any country because you deserve it. And that's going to be broken down into something that's going to be very special. Right now, and you know it, we have illegal immigrants that are treated better by far than our veterans. It's not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. So, Joel, I just really appreciate it. So unexpected. To be here is an honor. They don't build ships like this anymore, folks, you know. We don't do them this way anymore. I actually said, what about recommissioning? Look at this thing. The largest guns in the world, most powerful guns. I learned a lot about the Iowa. By the way, Iowa is a great place for a lot of reasons. You know, we have been treated so well in the state of Iowa. It's been incredible. Number one on the polls, and we love those people. They're great. So this is a great ship. Hawkeye, he goes. This is a great ship, and that's a great state. I just want to say that we're going to come out with some plans in a very short time. We're going to be building up our military. We're going to make our military so big and so strong and so great. And it will be so powerful that I don't think we're ever going to have to use it. Nobody's going to mess with us. That I can tell you. And we're going to have a president who's respected by Putin, who's respected by Iran. You know, let's talk about, for 2 seconds, let's talk about the Iran deal. Now, Obama and his people call him the supreme leader of Iran. Obama talks about the supreme leader. Well, I'm not calling him a supreme leader. But he said the other day that after this rip-off deal is completed, he will never do business with the United States again. We're finished with the United States. They're taking $150 billion. They're getting a deal that's going to go right into nuclear weapons much sooner than you think. They're going to self-police. Think of that one. They are going to go and self-police. They got they have 24-day provisions. And by the way, what people don't understand, the 24-day provision doesn't start. You know this, right? It doesn't start for a long time before you get to it. The clock is ticking. It could take forever. We may never get in there. It is one of the dumbest deals and one of the weakest contracts I've ever seen of any kind. So we are going to do things in this country right. We're not going to sign deals where we have 4 prisoners over there and they're still there and we don't even ask them. One of them's there because he's a Christian. We have a writer. The whole thing is absolutely insane. You know, they asked the president and they asked Secretary of State Kerry, who maybe, I've been saying Hillary Clinton is the worst Secretary of State in the history of this country, right? All right, I've been saying it. But it's possible. The world blew up around her. It blew up. Just blew up. The whole world is like a different place. It's possible that because of this deal made by Secretary Kerry, who has absolutely no clue how to negotiate, it may be that he's going to supersede. And I understand that he may want to run for president. He has no chance, like she has no chance. So we're going to see what happens. We have many problems in our country. One of them is immigration. Now, I took a tremendous hit when I brought up illegal immigration when I announced I was running for president. And for 2 weeks, I said, you know, Rush Limbaugh, who's a great guy, he said he has suffered more incoming, meaning the press, than anybody I've seen. So what happened is you have now found out what illegal immigration is all about. And I am so happy that I'm the one that brought it to the fore, because believe me, it's a big problem. It is a big problem. So you remember, for about 2 weeks, I said, boy, this is tougher than I thought running for president. And then you found out there's tremendous crime. There's tremendous drugs pouring across the border. Tremendous, beyond going to Chicago, going to New York, going to L.A., going all over our country. So the drugs pour in and the money pours out. Not a good deal. We get the drugs. They get the money. The drug cartels are going wild. They cannot believe how stupid our government is. They are making a fortune. The drugs come in. The money goes out daily. And I saw it because I was on the border. I was there, and we saw it, and everybody sees it every day. And we have the kind of people that can do something about it, but we have no leadership. None. None whatsoever. So we're going to build a wall. And Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Believe me. You know, a lot of politicians have said, oh, they're not going to pay. He must be. They don't know anything about it. They never read the art of the deal, first of all. So here's the story. I said the other day to one of my people, what is the United States trade deficit with Mexico, Japan, and China? So let's start with China. Almost $400 billion a year. Now, if you have a company where you're losing $400 billion, you got to do something very fast. We don't. We've been losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year, frankly, for decades. Not going to happen anymore. With Japan, where their massive ships float right here, and they drop off the cars, right? They drop off thousands and thousands and thousands of cars, millions of cars, and we sell them beef. And they don't want it because their farmers don't want our beef. They protest and they send it back. All right? It's not going to happen that way anymore. Now, with Mexico, and I love Mexico. I have many people from Mexico that work with me and they work for me and they buy my apartments. Same with China. I have so many people. They pay me millions and millions. What, am I supposed to hate China because they gave me millions of dollars to buy an apartment? I don't think so. I have the largest bank in the world as a tenant. It's from China. Bigger than any bank in this country by many times. They're from China. The problem we have is that the leaders of Mexico, Japan, China, and every other country that we do business with, they're smarter, more cunning, sharper than our leaders. I love free trade. The concept is great, but you need smart people. I have the smartest people in this country lined up. I know the smartest. I have Carl Icahn. I have the best business leaders, and they all want to do it. They're wealthy because they make good deals. Like me, I make good deals. You know, it's a talent. You can't be a politician. Look, I'm fighting some very nice people. Very nice, even though I'm leading in the polls. But they're very nice people. But they're never going to do anything with these countries. They're never going to be able to do it. It's an instinct. It's something that's special. They don't have it. Believe me, they don't have it. It's just going to be more of the same. So, we're going to make our country so great. We are going to make it strong. We are going to make it powerful. We're going to rebuild the military. We're going to make it so strong. We are going to take care of our veterans. And in the end, I want you people to look around and look at each other because this is going to be a special day. The other week, 2 weeks ago in Mobile, Alabama, 31,000 people showed up in a rainy, rough day 31,000 people came to see us speak, and we're talking about making America great again. Last night in Dallas, at the American Airlines Center, 20,000 people, the basketball arena of the Mavericks. 20,000 people showed up, and I want to tell you, it was a love fest. Everybody, there wasn't, think of it, 20,000 people, there wasn't one heckler in the whole room. I kept saying, there's got to be one.
I've had it with my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis.
Heckler in the whole room. I kept saying, there's got to be one. There was a word, two words that used to be used a lot called silent majority. They stopped using them. The silent majority, believe me, is back. And I think we can use it somewhat differently. I don't think we have to call it a silent majority anymore because they're not silent. People are not silent. They're disgusted with our incompetent politicians. They're disgusted with the people that are giving our country away. They're disgusted when they tell the Border Patrol agents who are good people and can do the job. They're disgusted when they're allowed to people just walk right in front of them and they're standing there helpless and people just pour into the country. They're disgusted when a woman who's 9 months pregnant walks across the border, has a baby, and you have to take care of that baby for the next 85 years. They're disgusted by what's happening to our country. And you're going to look around, you're going to remember who the people are that are here because we're doing something special. This is a movement. We're going to make our country great again. Believe me, we will make our country great again. I love you all. Thank you very much. I love you.
And that speech and footage and clip was brought to us by the Next News Network on YouTube. And, you know, at the end right there when he's talking about illegal immigration. Now, you know, under the system we have money stolen from us under this, you know, threat of being jailed and your property be taken from you with guys with guns, called it tax. It's supposed to be voluntary. Well, it's not. And then you have property tax and you have, you know, tax on everything you buy. So, you're under this threat. So now when people come across the border and get all kinds of benefits, you're a little angry. Justifiable. But be angry at the right people. Now, if you take his little speech right there about the illegal immigrants, you put his voice into German and then replace illegal immigrant with Jew, you'd have the same type of rhetoric. And I think it's dangerous rhetoric when you start closing your border, when you start closing yourself in. The problem isn't that we need to close ourselves in. It's a problem that through government, our face that's put out there to the rest of the world is one that the government has made. It's not the face of the American people. You know, if we can trade with the country, if you can do business with people, you would probably do business with people. And people go, well, you know, I don't want to do business with. Okay, you don't have to. But you have the freedom to, well, you don't have that with government. You don't have that with the world government, United Nations, and sanctions, and NATO. And we have a situation where we have people that close you off while they get to run around the world. That's really where the issue lies, I believe, and we have to be careful with what rhetoric we go along with and accept in our ideology. We have to really kind of think outside of just what is flashed across, your screen or your radio. You have to critically think things. Okay. Here's a article by Steve Watson out of InfoWars. Majority of Americans think government has too much power. 6 in 10 want to see feds reined in. 6 in 10 Americans believe that the federal government has grown too powerful, according to new findings in Gallup. The survey discovered that 60% of voters think the government has too much authority, a figure that marks a joint record high and which has been more or less the same for the past 3 years. It is a 9% increase on findings from 2009, the first year of Obama's presidency, highlighting that mistrust in government is on the rise. Only 1/3 of Americans have no problem with the amount of power the government has, while 7% believe the government doesn't have enough power. A more telling finding to emerge from the survey is that Democrats, independents, moderates, and self-described liberals have grown much more wary of government power since Obama took office. Another interesting finding is that 20% more black voters now express a concern about federal power compared to those who did at the beginning of Obama's presidency. A total of 48% of black voters say the government now has too much power compared to an average of 28% during Obama's first term. The finding dovetail with a record number of Americans now viewing Congress as corrupt and trust in government hitting all-time low. And again, that was Infowars.com. And says here, we have a little chart here from Gallup. First term, 2009 to 2012. Democrats, 24%, Republicans, 81%, Independents, 59%. And this is comparing Americans' views on federal power in Obama's 2 terms, percentage who think the federal government has too much power. So 24% of Democrats, 81% of Republicans, 59% of Independents. Then it breaks it down. Conservatives, 79%, moderates, 44%, and liberals, 24%. Blacks, 28%, Hispanics, 40%, and whites, 58%. And then we move to second term, 2013 to 2015. Democrats went from 24 to 37. Republicans went down 1% from 81 to 80. Independents went from 59 to 64. Conservatives, 79 to 77. Moderates, 44 to 57. Liberals, 24% to 37. Blacks went from 28 to 48. Hispanics, 40 to 44. Whites, 58 to 65. And you know what amazes me is that the conservatives and the Republicans, the Republicans went down 1%. Moderates went from 44 to 57, but conservatives went from 79 to 77. And that's kind of a reflection, I believe, a lot of times more on the establishment, status quo Republicans. that when it's not going their way, then they want to use government for their means. Says, oh, I already read that part. Okay. You can check that one out at Infowars.com. One second. Sorry. This is a little victory against more government power through Obama. TruthTheMedia.com. Federal court blocks Obama's EPA rule nationwide. Says here, on Friday, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for Sixth Circuit based in Cincinnati issued a nationwide stay blocking the Obama administration's highly controversial waters of the United States rule set forth by the EPA. State legislators from across the country believe the rule violates the 10th Amendment and sets a dangerous precedent for federal intrusion. In total, more than 30 states have sought legal action against the rule. A stay temporarily silences the whirlwind of confusion that springs from uncertainty about the requirements of the new rule and whether they will survive legal testing, the court said. In July, Tennessee State Representative Sheila Butt, Republican Columbia, led a successful campaign to join Tennessee to the case presented to the Sixth Circuit. Quote, it's important to realize that this rule would give the federal government unprecedented powers over property owners, farmers, and businesses. Even a puddle of water in your driveway could be subject Okay, I should be back again. Second time I lost connection. It said this isn't the first federal ruling against the EPA's new rule. In August, U.S. District Judge Ralph Erickson issued an injunction against the rule one day before it was set to begin. However, the EPA largely ignored the ruling and charged ahead with implementation regardless of the court's ruling. The EPA claimed that the ruling did apply nationwide, even though legal scholars and legislators around the country disagreed. Thursday's ruling sought to make clear the EPA that the WOTUS rule could no longer be implemented until further legal ruling had settled the petitioner's concerns, which is a rare ruling, I believe, in our days now. Usually it's like, it's government, they can do what they want. So, a small victory, but a victory at that. It's really crazy to watch a lot of this. A lot of it has ties to the United Nations, Agenda 21. You start seeing it through all of these environmental things that get pushed. And of course, they're trying to use the EPA to make up regulations that aren't law, but regulations. And expect people to just go ahead and enforce it. And luckily, they didn't with this. I know that I've seen a lot of these type of implementations happening in Indiana, specifically around one of the biggest cities in the northeast part of Indiana. And from what I heard too, it's happening somewhere around the biggest city in central Indiana. And these two cities are signed on to a agreement that's linked to United Nations and this environmental BS. And basically they're just putting up signs saying these are watersheds and that's wetlands. And even though you've been doing stuff with that property, well, it's wetlands, and you're no longer allowed to do anything with that property. You can't put soil down. You can't cut down that tree. It's ridiculous. So we need more judges that are willing to actually take this on. Again, that was truthandmedia.com. Okay. Talking about this whole environmental BS. This out of the libertarianrepublic.com. IMF head calls for carbon taxes to bail out faltering government finances. Says here the head of the IMF recently called for countries sorry, that popped up there. Call for countries to start taxing carbon dioxide emissions to finance struggling governments. Quote, it's just the right moment to introduce carbon taxes, unquote, IMF's managing director, Kristen Lagarde, said at a conference. Need to put what day this took place because finance ministers are looking for revenues. Lagarde doubled down on her remarks by tweeting that if we chicken out on climate change, we will all turn to chicken. We will be fried, grilled, and roasted. The IMF head's remarks come about a month before United Nations delegates are set to meet in Paris. So, taxing people on their emissions to pay for debt of a country somehow prevents climate change. What the flying? Says here the IMF head's remarks come about a month before United Nations delegates are set to meet in Paris at the United Nations Climate Change Summit. Delegates are expected to hash out a treaty to cut global carbon dioxide emissions, one of the key goals of the Obama administration. The progressive blog Think Progress claims that Lagarde's call for carbon taxes could represent a tipping point in the global warming economic debate. Yet, only 4 nations, Ireland, Sweden, Chile, and Finland, currently place a direct tax on carbon dioxide. No nation taxes emissions at the levels deemed necessary to substantially mitigate climate change by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So, taking money from people stops climate change. Bullshit. Oh my gosh. I feel like reading this, I'm like, they really just think you are a complete idiot. Yeah, pay taxes because that'll stop climate change. No, one, if it's one thing to believe in climate. I believe in climate change. I think climate's always changed. I think it has before humans set foot on this world. And guess what? There's proof out there. Hey, look, a drought. Hey, look, the ice age. Hey, look, a drought. Hey, look, the ice age. Flooding. Oh, look, this used to be an ocean, and now it's a desert. Duh. Believe me, the Earth is going to survive just fine. Yeah, and again, the corporations always get kind of cut a deal on this because, well, you'll get taxed on your car or your wood burning stove in your house or your tractor. But guess what? The corporations with the big old smokestacks will be going. So, yeah, this isn't going to help a damn thing. Says yet Australia, the largest economy to ever have a carbon tax, repealed it in 2014 after a landslide electoral victory by the country's Conservative Party. The Conservative coalition moved quickly to get rid of the unpopular tax and other laws put in place by Australia's ousted left-wing government. Today, the tax that you voted to get rid of is finally gone, a useless, destructive tax which damaged jobs, which hurt families' cost of living, and which didn't actually help the environment, is finally gone, former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott said when the tax was repealed in 2014. Carbon tax critics have also pointed out its regressive nature, arguing it would disproportionately harm the poorest members of society who spend a much higher percentage of their household budget on energy. A 2009 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that the carbon tax would double the tax burden on the poorest households. A tax on all man-made greenhouse gas emissions would make a tax burden for the poorest households 3 times greater than the richest households, according to the study. There's also a substantial body of research that suggests taxing carbon dioxide would have no meaningful impact on global warming, the whole point of the tax. The Libertarian Cato Institute even created an interactive calculator to show just how much reducing carbon dioxide emissions, whether it's through taxation or cap and trade, would impact predicted global temperature rise. Cato's calculator suggests that Lagarde's proposal would have practically no impact on global warming. And that's at thelibertarianrepublic.com. Again, governments do nothing to help the poor, only benefit themselves. How many thousands of years of this repeating, and these empires be created, they fall, everybody gets crapped on, and then we repeat it again? Really? Next time it falls, let it fall and leave it fail. Come on. And of course, it looks like Facebook is back to its old self. And this one's from Kit Daniels, and there's a video. But Facebook reportedly censoring anti-TPP posts, which I'm sure there's a lot of that put into that, environmentalism put into that too. So don't be surprised with that. Facebook is reportedly censoring an article critical of the TPP. Within the first 30 minutes of its publication on Infowars.com, the article entitled TPP to Kill Thousands by Expanding Monopoly Power to Drug Companies would constantly hit around 50 shares on the embedded Facebook counter, but then the counter would drop dramatically as shown in these videos. This occurred several times over a 30-minute period, and an investigation by IT staff found nothing unusual that could be interfering with the counter. Facebook was similarly censoring anti-GMO article back in July. We've seen thousands of reports regarding the censorship of content by Facebook and others regarding the TPP, Monsanto, and similar topics. Anthony Gucciardi said regarding the censored article, the bottom line here is that this article was being blocked across numerous platforms under the guise of a security threat when we know full well that these sites are perfectly safe. The social media giant was also suppressing an article exposing the Pope Kid incident in which Amnesty activists staged a PR stunt involving Pope Francis to promote illegal immigration. Not long after, Facebook CEO Mike Zuckerberg was caught discussing the censorship of anti-migrant posts with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. After being asked about Facebook's efforts to curtail speech, Zuckerberg said, "We need to do some work," confirming he'd already started looking at ways to hinder comments in opposition to Merkel's immigration stance. Michael Thelen reported. The most recent article, apparently censored by Facebook, revealed how the TPP gives signatory countries the ability to grant pharmaceuticals 3 years of market exclusivity for new uses of cold medicines, preventing cheaper generic drugs from competing. For example, the drug Zidovudin was first discovered as an effective cancer treatment in '64, and years later, in '87, it was also found to be effective against HIV, and under the TPP, it would be illegal for generic drug makers to compete with the decades-old Vizuducane in the HIV market for at least 3 years. So the person that holds the name brand would have that. Generics could only be sold for cancer for 3 years. Even though they already make it and sell it for cancer, they couldn't use a generic for the same purpose. Now, how does that make sense? Oh, it doesn't. Okay, give me a second here. And before we leave, when people go, you just need to be able to pay your debt. And you forget where most Americans are. And here's another article out of, it's actually out of Market Watch. and it's titled "Most Americans Have Less Than $1,000 in Savings." Americans are living right on the edge, at least when it comes to financial planning. Approximately 62% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings account, and 21% don't even have a savings account. According to a new survey, more than 5,000 adults conducted this month by Google Consumer Survey for personal finance website geobankingrates.com. It's worrisome that such a large percentage of Americans have so little set aside in a savings account. Says Cameron Huddleston, a personal finance analyst for the site. They likely don't have cash reserves to cover an emergency and will have to rely on credit, friends, and family, or even their retirement accounts to cover unexpected expenses. This is supported by a similar survey of 1,000 adults carried out earlier this year by personal finance site Bankrate.com, which also found that 62% of Americans have no energy savings for things such as a $1,000 emergency room visit or a $500 car repair. Faced with an emergency, they say they would raise the money by reducing spending elsewhere, 26% borrowing from family and friends, 16%, or using credit cards, 12%. And among those who had savings prior to 2008, 50% said they used some or all their savings in the Great Recession, according to U.S. Federal Reserve Survey. Over 4,000 adults released last year. Of course, poultry saving account rates don't encourage people to save either. Well, after 08, most people that were working a job that they made money, they were able to save back. They went out without a job for a while. Unemployment ran out. They got a job. They're making half of what they were. I know a lot of people that they were well-paying jobs. They were working full-time, full benefits. Now they're part-time at Walmart. What the hell is that? Just because there are jobs out there, but not as many, and all these people that got laid off fighting for the few jobs in that field that pay that amount, or in even another field that their experience will allow them to prosper in that field. There's just so many people fighting for it. And even if you have a talent in another field, there's people that were laid off that were already in that field that are fresh in it. Walmart. Part-time here, part-time there. Some even full-time there and a part-time job just to come close to what they were making before, not even making that. I'm like, just looking around and watching these people, and it's like, this is becoming, feeling like slave labor. But we're at the end of the broadcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV for all the great broadcasts coming up after this. And I'll catch you next week. Don't forget to check out UCY.TV and click the UCY support tab. Help support this network that gives hosts like me and others here a platform to voice our opinion and spread the news. And when you're going about your day, just you have